So you and I, we're about to go on a little adventure together. That adventure is going to span 118 years of Tudors, and it's going to be one generation at a time. How does that sound to you? I'll be your host this evening. My name is Christina. Thank you for joining us here at my Tudor Era Tapestry. The air was thick with the promise of new life, mingling in the faint tang of wood smoke from the hearth. As Greenwich stone halls hummed with quiet anticipation of a court, awaiting a second Tudor heir. As June's warmth deepened, Eliza's confinement drew near, the court's anticipation swelling with her. On June 28, 1491, in the stifling intimacy of her lying-in chamber at Greenwich, she labored beneath velvet hangings. After hours of effort, a son was born. Henry, a robust babe with his father's eyes and a booming cry that echoed through the palace. The court erupted in joy. Jousts and feasts planned to herald the spare heir. Named for his father and the Lancastrian legacy, Eliza, exhausted, cradled the boy, her golden hair damp against her brow, her heart swelling as she traced his tiny features. Seeing in them a promise of strength, the new baby smell clung to him. In the days that followed, Eliza rested in her chamber, its windows emitting the soft hum of summer, while Henry's birth was celebrated with wine and song. Her cousin Maggie, newlywed, visited her, her own Yorkist heart a quiet echo of Eliza's. Eliza's thoughts, though, lingered on her mother, whose hope for her lost sons flickered with Warbeck's name. As she held Henry, her fingers brushing his downy hair, Eliza's smile held a fierce resolve. Her children were her answer to the realm's thorns, their lives a vow to heal England's scars. In the nursery's warmth, with Meg toddling nearby, Eliza's heart was a vigil, her beauty a beacon, her love a shield for a dynasty still blooming amid the whispers of a fractured past. In the quiet of the nursery, where Eliza's life wove fragile peace, the world beyond pressed its weight. Her children's laughter held the presence of a unified realm. Yet the specter of unrest lingered like a shadow across the cradle. As she turned from Henry's soft breaths to the memory of Arthur's investiture, Eliza's thoughts hardened. Her son's knighthood was a triumph, but the whispers of Warbeck's claim stirred doubts that even a mother's resolve could not fully silence. Arthur, now a solemn boy, knighted in the Order of the Garter just months ago at Windsor's St. George's Chapel. She had watched him, small, in his green and gold robes, his earnest steps a vow of Tudor legitimacy, her heart swelling as nobles cheered the heir who bound York and Lancaster. Arthur's investiture, orchestrated by Henry and Margaret, had been a shield against Yorkist unrest, yet Warbeck's claim threatened to pierce it. If Richard lived, his rightful claim as Edward IV's son could rally disaffected lords, casting Arthur as a usurper's heir in their eyes. The Spanish alliance, whispered in council for Arthur's future, might falter if Warbeck's rebellion gained ground, and Eliza's son could face a realm divided once more. The thought chilled her, her hands tightening on a locket, its cold metal a reminder of the brothers whose fate still haunted her queenship. As a mother, her loyalty was to Henry and Arthur, yet her heart yearned for her brother's survival. She had written to her mother, Elizabeth, seeking counsel, but her reply was cautious, urging Eliza to protect her children, while hinting at her own inquiries into Warbeck's truth. Margaret, ever vigilant, loomed in Eliza's thoughts, her sharp gaze a reminder that any sympathy for Warbeck could brand her disloyal, threatening Arthur, Meg, and baby Henry's future. Eliza's cousin Maggie was a quieter echo of Yorkist blood, her marriage a Tudor leash that mirrored Eliza's own delicate balance. The court, still buzzing from Arthur's garter ceremony, celebrated a dynasty Eliza helped forge, but Warbeck's shadow cast doubt on its roots. Margaret's heart thrummed with rare warmth as she recalled the moment she first saw her newest grandson, blinking up from his cradle, his tiny fists a promise of vigor. This one was God's. Eliza's third pregnancy, evident since early spring, had been a vigil Margaret oversaw with relentless care, her physicians ensuring the Queen's health, her visits a blend of maternal counsel and strategic foresight. The birth, swift and merciful, was a triumph, a second male heir to bolster the Tudor line against the shadows of Yorkist unrest. Lambert Simnel's rebellion, crushed in 1487, and now Perkin Warbeck's whispers, stirring in Ireland. Henry's arrival following Arthur's investiture as Prince of Wales and little Meg's birth in 1489 was a bulwark, a safeguard for a crown still fragile after Bosworth's blood. Her thoughts lingered on the christening, held mere days ago at Greenwich's chapel, a swift yet splendid affair she'd orchestrated with the precision of a general. The boy, named Henry, was baptized with holy oil, his cries swallowed by the choir's hymns. A second son to secure a realm where Arthur, now 4, carried the weight of first heir. Margaret had a tender hope for this new Henry's future. She envisioned him as a knight, perhaps, his dark eyes fierce with Tudor resolve, or a scholar, his mind sharp like her own, a pillar to support Arthur's reign. Yet caution tempered her dreams, for the court was a chessboard, and Warbeck's claim threatened to topple the peace Eliza's marriage had sealed. Margaret's spies tracked the pretender's movements, her letters to Henry urging vigilance, her wealth funding pageants to celebrate Arthur's knighthood, and now Henry's birth, each a public vow of Tudor legitimacy. The Spanish alliance, negotiations for Arthur's betrothal to Catherine of Aragon, was her shield abroad, but this newborn Henry was a shield at home, a prince to silence Yorkist murmurs. Her days were a whirlwind of purpose, her chambers at Westminster a nerve center of scribes and messengers. She penned letters to rally lords, her quills scratching plans to elevate Henry's status, perhaps Duke of York, a title to reclaim the Plantagenet mantle from Warbeck's grasp. Eliza, recovering in her confinement, loomed in Margaret's thoughts, a queen whose fertility strengthened the crown, yet whose Yorkist blood tied her to the very threats Margaret fought. She respected Eliza's grace, but guarded her influence, ensuring the court revolved around her son's will. Her granddaughter Meg, 2 years old, and Arthur, sturdy but young, were the dynasty's heart, but Henry stirred a vision of abundance, a realm secured by heirs. The whispers of Warbeck, a shadow from Burgundy, chilled her, but Margaret's hope for her grandson Henry was a flame, fierce, unyielding, and a vow that this boy, with his father's name and her own resolve, would grow to guard the dynasty she had birthed through sacrifice and steel. As Greenwich's bells tolled for the new prince, Margaret rose, her heart alight with a mother's pride and a matriarch's unswerving will. The summer air hung heavy with the scent of blooming roses and river mist where Elizabeth resided in quiet seclusion. Her once vibrant beauty echoed with lines of grief and resilience. In June, news reached her of the birth of her second grandson, Henry Tudor, born to her daughter Eliza at Greenwich Palace. The summer twilight of late June 1491 cast a frail glow over the abbey, where Elizabeth sat in her chamber, her fingers clutching a white rose pressed within a prayer book, its brittle petals a faint echo of her Yorkist heart. The birth of Henry, named for his father, was a triumph for her daughter, a second male heir to strengthen the Tudor dynasty after Arthur. She pictured the boy, perhaps with Elizabeth's golden hair, his cries a promise of stability. She lingered a moment on the memories of her many babies, some grown now, some gone. Yet the rumors of Warbeck, filtering through loyal maids' hushed words, cut deeper, reviving the wound of her sons. The youth, proclaimed in Burgundy as Richard, Duke of York, bore a tale of escape and royal bearing, stirring a mother's desperate hope. Could her boy, last seen at 9 with his shy smile, live? Her joy for Henry's birth mingled with this faint spark, a longing to believe Richard might return, restoring her shattered heart. But doubt, sharpened by the Lambert Simnel rebellion, held her hope in check. Warbeck's claim, backed by Yorkist exiles, felt too much like Simnel's deceit, a ploy to unsettle Henry VII's throne. Elizabeth, seasoned in courtly games, feared another false dawn, her skepticism a shield against further pain. Elizabeth, once the White Queen, lay in her shadowed chamber. Her once dazzling beauty seemed a fragile relic, her golden hair dulled to silver, her eyes dim as twilight's edge. The world beyond the abbey's walls thrummed with the Tudor dynasty's rise. Yet here, in this damp hush, Elizabeth was but a whisper of her former self, a rose pressed thin between the pages of her forgotten book. Memories flickered in the half-light. Her sons, Edward and Richard, lost to the tower's shadow, the crown she'd won through love and guile, the bitter exile of her power under Tudor rule. Whispers of Perkin Warbeck, a youth claiming her son Richard's name, had reached her months ago, stirring a mother's desperate spark. Could her boy live? But doubt had quenched that hope, leaving only the ache of absence. Her daughter's strength, her grandchildren's laughter, these were her legacy. Yet they felt distant, like stars veiled by mist. The abbey's silence pressed close, broken by the slow drip of wax from a lone candle, its golden ray a frail defiance against the indigo dusk creeping through the window. Elizabeth's breath faltered, each inhale a labor, her body worn by years of ambition and loss. No court gathered to mark her passing, no heralds to sing her name. Only a single attendant, eyes wet with quiet loyalty, knelt by her side, murmuring a prayer as the queen's gaze drifted to the unseen horizon. She thought of Eliza, her golden daughter, whose womb had birthed a dynasty, and of Henry, her grandson, his fierce cries a promise of kingship yet to come. On June 8, as the mist thickened and the candle's flame wavered, Elizabeth Woodville slipped into eternity, her once vibrant beauty now a whisper, softened by death's gentle thorns. The toll of a distant bell echoed through the fog, a solitary knell swallowed by the river's sigh. No trumpet sounded, no herald sang. Only the petals of a white rose, scattered on the wind, marked the end of a queen whose legacy endured in her daughter's line, a golden thread weaving through the gathering dusk. In the shadowed halls of Farleigh Castle, where the autumn air of 1492 curled thick with the scent of fading roses, damp earth, and the faint tang of wood smoke, Maggie cradled her newborn son, Henry, amidst the turning leaves. The infant, swaddled in cloth of gold, embroidered with delicate threads of white roses. His small cries piercing the stillness was a fragile hope for the beleaguered Yorkist line, a defiant spark to rekindle the flame of the white rose that had once blazed across England's battlefields. His eyes, dark and searching, seemed to carry a glimmer of his mother's Neville blood, fierce with the unyielding clarity of her ancestors, or perhaps the quiet, steadfast resolve of his father, Sir Richard Pole, a loyal knight whose lady had anchored Maggie's turbulent heart. In her arms, Henry was more than a child. He was a promise of endurance, a living thread in the tapestry of family, battered by loss, yet clinging to its proud heritage. Maggie's heart was bruised by the weight of grief and unswerving loyalty. Even as her brother, Edward, Earl of Warwick, languished in the Tower of London, his youth and royal blood a silent chain binding them to the suspicions of a Tudor king. The birth of Henry, named to echo the Tudor king, Henry VII, yet rooted in fierce pride of her own lineage, was a quiet triumph in the seclusion of Farleigh Castle, far from the glittering, treacherous court of her cousin, Eliza, now queen consort. Maggie pictured Eliza in the tender corners of her memory, radiant the previous summer when she had birthed her son, Prince Harry. Maggie's Henry, born a year later under the oak-beam ceiling of Farleigh, was no prince, but to her he was a beacon, a chance to carve a place for the Poles amidst the shifting tides of power that churned in the wake of the Wars of the Roses. She held him close, her fingers tracing the soft curve of his cheek, the warmth of his skin a stark contrast to the cold stone walls that surrounded them. In the stillness, she whispered prayers to the Virgin, her voice barely audible, beseeching that her son might grow strong, free from the shadows that haunted her brother. In her dreams, she heard Edward's boyish laughter, now silenced by the tower's unyielding stone embrace. In the dim glow of her chamber, Maggie lit a single beeswax candle, its flickering thread of light casting trembling shadows across the walls, a silent prayer for the soul of her aunt, Elizabeth Woodville, the once queen, whose death had come too soon after Eliza's triumph with young Prince Harry. Maggie mourned the woman who had taught her to wield grace as armor, whose cunning had secured a throne for her daughter Eliza through marriage that bound York to Tudor. Yet Elizabeth Woodville's final years had been spent in the cloistered quiet of Bermondsey Abbey, her power stripped by the hands of a king who distrusted the Woodville name. To Maggie, her aunt had been a reminder that Yorkist blood could endure, even in exile, that resilience could bloom in the cracks of a hostile world. But her death, so radiant and raw, felt like a warning, a whisper of fragility of power, the cost of loyalty to a house that had fallen at Bosworth Field. In the golden haze of summer 1492, Meg Tudor, not yet 3, scampered through sun-dappled gardens of Greenwich Palace, her auburn curls bouncing beneath a tiny linen cap, her dark eyes bright with her mother Eliza's clarity, sparkling with the boundless wonder of a child. The air was thick with the scent of blooming lavender and honeysuckle, their sweetness mingling with the warm earthiness of clipped grass. As Meg's small feet pattered across the paths, chasing a butterfly's fleeting dance, she was a radiant bud of the Tudor dynasty, her rosy cheeks flushed with laughter, her tiny hands clutching a daisy chain woven by her nurse. Named for her grandmother, Margaret Beaufort, Meg was a living thread in a fragile tapestry of York and Lancaster, her innocence a quiet vow to mend a realm still tender. The palace's stone walls, softened by climbing roses, echoed with her giggles, a melody that drifted to the nursery where her baby brother Henry, barely a year, cooed in his cradle, and her elder brother Arthur, nearing 6, practiced his letters under a tutor's watchful eye. Meg's days were a whirl of childish delight, bound by the gentle care of nurses and the doting smiles of Eliza's ladies, who dressed her in soft gowns of cream and green, their silk rustling as they lifted her to see the swans gliding on the Thames. The nursery, aglow with tapestries of frolicking hares, was her kingdom, its air warm with the scent of milk and beeswax, where she played with wooden dolls or toddled after Arthur, her voice a high, clear babble that charmed even the sternest courtiers. Eliza, her golden-haired mother, radiant despite the weight of queenship, would steal moments to sit with her children, her eyes softening as she braided Meg's curls or sang lullabies in a voice like a summer breeze. The court at Greenwich hummed with life, feasts and music to celebrate the Tudor heirs, but whispers of Perkin Warbeck, the pretender, claiming to be her lost Uncle Richard, cast a faint shadow, their murmur reaching even the nursery's edges, where Meg's laughter drowned them out, a thorn in the Tudor peace. Meg, oblivious to the whispers, found joy in the small wonders of summer, picking cherries with her cousin Maggie, now Lady Pole, whose gentle hands steadied her as she reached for the fruit, her eyes warm with affection. Maggie, newlywed to Richard Pole, was a frequent visitor, her Yorkist heart a quiet echo of Eliza, her presence a reminder of their shared blood. Margaret Beaufort, the steely grandmother whose name Meg bore, sent gifts of embroidered caps and stern letters urging vigilance, her prayers a shield against the unrest that lingered like a storm on the horizon. In the nursery, Meg's world was untouched by such fears, as she napped beneath a canopy of stars strewn in silk, the summer light filtering through leaded windows. Meg was a beacon of hope, her innocence a prayer for a realm whose roses, red and white, might bloom unthorned, her tiny heart beating like a dynasty still finding its roots. In the languid heat of June 1492, the Alhambra Palace in Granada glowed like a jewel, its alabaster arches catching light in a dance of shadow and radiance. The air hummed with the perfume of jasmine and orange blossoms, mingling with the faint musk of sandalwood incense drifting from the palace's chapel. The Reconquista, that centuries-long crusade that culminated in January with the surrender of Granada, the Nasrid stronghold. And now the palace thrummed with the pulse of a newly unified Spain. Its courtyards echoed with the clink of armor, the rustle of silk, and the fervent prayers of a triumphant Castilian court. Amid its tapestry of change, Catherine of Aragon, a 6-year-old infanta, wandered the gardens, her auburn hair woven with silk ribbons of sapphire and gold, her small feet treading paths, clutching the tiny prayer book bound in crimson leather, its vellum pages inscribed with her mother's meticulous script. Catherine traced the Latin verses with a finger, her lips moving silently, her lessons guided by stern tutors and her devout mother, Queen Isabella of Castile, wove together scripture, the lives of saints, and tales of chivalric heroes whose valor seemed to pulse in the very stones of Alhambra. Yet the palace buzzed with a name that sparked her imagination like a comet. Cristobal Colon, Christopher Columbus, a Genoese mariner whose weathered face and fervent pleas for royal patronage had become a fixture in her parents' court. She had glimpsed him one sultry afternoon in the hall of the ambassadors, his voice rising with the cadence of a poet as he spoke of sailing west to reach the Indies, his calloused hands carving invisible maps in the air. To Catherine's young mind, he was a figure spun from the ballads sung by minstrels, a knight-errant of the sea, his eyes alight with a fire that promised lands beyond the horizon's edge. His words conjured images of golden cities, spice-laden winds, and oceans vast as the heavens themselves. Seated on a cushioned bench in the shaded court, where slender columns framed a fountain's gentle murmur, Catherine listened as her mother, Queen Isabella, deliberated with her advisers. Isabella's voice, steady as a cathedral bell, weighed Columbus's audacious plan against Spain's divine mission to spread Christendom. Her father, King Ferdinand of Aragon, his dark beard flecked with gray, leaned forward, his pragmatic gaze tempered by cautious ambition. Catherine, her small hands nervously folding the hem of her linen dress, its embroidery catching the sunlight, felt a surge of awe for this mariner who dared to dream of new worlds. In her mind's eye, she saw him standing at the helm, sails billowing like the wings of an archangel, carrying the cross of her parents' faith to shores unknown. She imagined herself aboard that ship, her hair whipped by salt-laden winds, her heart swelling with the promise of discovery. Yet her childish wonder was pierced by whispers of doubt that drifted through the palace like smoke. Courtiers, their velvet cloaks rustling as they passed beneath the arches, murmured that Columbus was a madman, his westward route a reckless folly that would squander Spain's newfound wealth and drown her hopes in endless seas. Some spoke of monsters lurking in the deep, of waves that could swallow fleets whole. Catherine overheard these mutterings as she played, where the reflection of the palace shimmered in a still pool. The words troubled her, planting seeds of unease in her heart. At night she knelt beside her mother in the palace chapel, the air heavy with beeswax and frankincense, the glow of candles casting a halo around the statue of the Virgin Mary. Her prayers, once simple pleas for her family's health and the souls of her siblings, now carried new weight, a whisper of hope for Columbus's success, for his ships to find safe harbor, for his dreams to weave Spain's destiny into a tapestry of glory. In her young heart this voyage was entwined with the divine will, a thread in the grand design her parents served. As she stood by a courtyard pool, tossing pebbles that sent ripples across the water's surface, Catherine's thoughts spun like the threads of a loom. She dreamed of oceans crossed, of kingdoms joined by faith and discovery, of a world where her own future might unfold as queen. You can share your thoughts with me at longlivethequeenpodcast@gmail.com. Slide into my DMs on Facebook or Instagram at longlivethequeenpodcast, or join the party on Patreon, where we have extended episodes and bonus content.